Good evening, Internet. What is up, guys? It's Randall Parker Jr. here with another episode of Road to Liberty. Today is Friday, August 22nd, 2014. And today I want to talk about some of the recent stuff with regard to cops. And I want to talk about what I consider to be pretty out of nowhere and pretty rampant Stefan Molyneux bashing. And I'm sort of stepping on eggshells here on this one because it's come to my attention that a lot of you folks out there who would be watching this program, I'm sure, are starting to get a little bit more vocal and a little bit more, a little bit more serious about your position on Stefan Molyneux. So, and that's fine. It's good to take serious positions on things, but I feel like a lot of this stuff has gotten kind of out of hand with regards to sort of bashing certain aspects of his approach or philosophy, and I feel not as much folks right now are getting behind him and trying to come to his defense. And I think this is something that's been going on to where um, people have been harboring these feelings about his material or his program or approach for some time, and now it's come to their attention that other people feel that way. So as people are wont to do, when others approve of something or feel a certain way, others feel like they can come in and piggyback that without having to be brave or be honest. Excuse me. I don't know what the merits are in that. I think we were supposed to applaud and look up to bravery and honesty. So while I don't want to censor anybody or explicitly say that I'm right and someone else is wrong and that they should view Molyneux in the way that I do, at the same point in time, I feel like, and we'll get into it a little bit in a minute, just to tease that and bury the lead a little, but I want to get into a little bit why I feel like it's gone too far with the bashing from people, and I want to talk about why I feel that way. And I don't know. I don't expect you guys to all change your view on him overnight, but it would be something that I would appreciate if you all could consider as well. So before we get into that, let's talk about the situation going on in the United States, wherein in the past week, in the second or third week of August, I believe there's been three. Now, there's one in St. Louis that I covered pretty extensively yesterday on Facebook, and I got pretty excited and upset about, I will admit. Not that I got overly emotional, but I did get emotional. So I wasn't acting and speaking fully within my calm, collected, rational mind, but I was representing my views pretty accurately, and I don't take anything back. I am willing to modify or amend my statements if someone could point out something I said that was inconsistent. If you're not willing to do that, you're not being intellectually honest with yourself, and you're not actually trying to stand for something. You're just trying to be right. So I'm certainly not trying to just be right. But what I feel is that, and I said this pretty vocally on Facebook yesterday with regards to these cop shootings. I don't mean cops that were shot. I mean people that are shot by police officers. And I don't know how to put it any more nicely than how I was kind of speaking yesterday, which is to say that, I was making pretty blanket generalizations about cops. So in that sense, I got even on the nerves of some libertarian types because they're saying, well, at the end of the day, you may not like the actions of this police officer, but at the end of the day, he's still a human being. So aside from the badge, aside from what it is that we all may expect from a police officer, like I might expect to be harassed, whereas the next person might expect a polite and friendly conversation. Regardless of that, there are people in the society known as cops, and it's not just in America, but it is one of the more rampant police state type nations, and that's a loaded term, but I'll unpack it in a second. In America, we have, in my opinion, a problem with the police. So that's the more calm and calculated way for me to put it to you guys. But at the same point in time, to say we have a problem with the police is almost to understate the issue. That's like me saying I have a problem with my toaster, or I have a problem with my cell phone, it's got a cracked screen, or the toast comes out a little burnt. Not the case. The toaster has never tried to murder me. nor has my cell phone. No, I've tried to murder the cell phone probably many times, but never has the cell phone actually tried to inflict its anything evil upon me. So that's where that comes from with me, to where I felt like, okay, this is the last straw. Like, it's gone too far. Let me unpack this a little bit in case you're watching the video a year or two from now and you might have forgotten about this week in time and what had happened. Or if you're watching it right now, you're not sure. If you're watching it in August of 2014, you're not sure where I'm going with all this. Well, so first of all, there's a gentleman by the name of Michael Brown who was shot and killed in Ferguson, Missouri. The conversation, or the question still remains, was the gentleman, Mr. Brown, was he instigating this? To what extent? Was he or was he not? Did he assault the officer? I believe it's now being said, and I'm going to go meta with this in a second. I'm going to take this out to how it could apply to more than just this one situation in Ferguson. But so here's the basic rundown. I'm not going to go into it too much. You guys all pretty much know, I'm sure, by now. But he is believed to have stolen some petty items from a little convenience store. Now, I'm not by any way trying to marginalize the act of theft, but at the same point in time, what happened at the end of this event was the young man was gunned down, or let's just say a less loaded term, he was the result of a police homicide. Or yeah, I think I mean, but what is the border? Maybe someone can tell me. What, I'm going to try to get the chat going too. I've just been in my little intro rant. What is the border between homicide and murder? Is that the same? Homicide is like a police term. It's like a loaded status type of term in my mind, to where sorry, I'm typing. I can't really type and talk at the same time. To where homicide implies that you offended the state in some way, that you broke man's law, you broke state's law. Whereas murder, I feel like is not a packed term. It doesn't imply law breaking. Murder implies the wrongful taking of another person's life. So anyway, I'm getting a little tangential, but at the end of the day, Michael Brown is now dead, and he was shot, I believe, 5 or 6 or 7 times, something to that effect, by police officers, by a single police officer in Missouri. Not a day or two later, a gentleman, I don't know his name off the top of my head, was gunned down, shot and killed by police officers in St. Louis, Missouri, or yeah, I believe in St. Louis. So I'm opening up the chat now. If anybody has anything to add to the discussion, or if they would like to actually possibly pop in on the program to share their view, I will definitely do my best technologically to make that happen for you. Just a matter of being aware of what is taking place here, and yeah, don't believe any comments on chat yet. So, the gentleman was shot and killed over his supposed theft. It's being said now that the police officer was badly beaten prior to him, almost like a Zimmerman Trayvon situation, to where, you know, the extent to which the murder is justified is probably the extent to which the person was acting in self-defense. Whereas, in my opinion, and this is an opinion despite pretty concrete evidence, in the St. Louis shooting, which I uploaded a short version of yesterday on the Voluntary Virtues Network. If you go to youtube.com/voluntary virtues and you search for, oh, good Chuck, man, he's such a nice guy. Chuck Ford coming up next with the Liberty Geek show. Chuck Ford, he just texted me and said, hope you're doing your show and enjoying yourself and it's going well. It's a cool kid. Love that guy. So where was I? Yes. Michael Brown, Facebook. I don't know. I got a little sidetracked. No big deal. So with the St. Louis situation, I uploaded the video yesterday, shorter snippet of it, and I couldn't get the blurriness too much out because I was zooming in off of a cell phone camera. And if you see the one that was online, the screen was like the size of a cell phone. It was oriented like this, so to where if you guys are watching the video, you can see I'm making a square with my hands, kind of trying to, like this. So it looked like a cell phone size, and zoomed out. The gentleman walks past the person who was shot. Try to, if anybody knows his name, you can shoot it in the chat for me. Um, and the cell phone turns back around. The guy's taking the video is commenting and saying, "Oh man, I can't believe this is happening." Because what happened is the guy stole 2 sodas or 2 iced teas or whatever outside of a convenience store, took them from outside the convenience store, and placed them on the curb, almost as a protest to say, and I don't want to put words in the mouth of a dead man, but this is my interpretation of what I saw, almost as if to say, hey, kind of fuck this system, fuck the people that make it hard for me to get a couple sodas, and I'm going to steal these sodas, put them on the curb, and I don't give a shit. Cops can come, fuck them. What are they going to do? Screw them. It's almost like they had this guy had this kind of attitude like, I've had enough. Now, on the other side of the coin, it almost looks like it might have been a suicide by cop situation, and for those of you who aren't familiar with that phrase, the notion of suicide by cop is where you kind of know that by instigating a police officer, you're likely to get shot, and not even just shot in a not that it could be funny. I'm sorry, not that it could be comical, but not shot in the sense of like shot with a taser or shot with a warning shot. As you can tell from especially the shooting in Missouri, because it's on tape. Look, the one I uploaded yesterday on the Voluntary Virtues Network, it's called Short. Roads Liberty Short. I think it's called St. Louis police shooting. That video is the best job I could do to try to get in on the actual action that was taking place. You see in my video that I edited, you see Mr. Suspect, Mr. Victim here of police shooting, or the thief, however you want to phrase him. You see him kind of standing in the sidewalk as a police police SUV pulls up. You see him walking towards a police SUV, and you can hear him saying, shoot me now, go ahead, motherfucker, shoot me now," whatever he was saying, something like that. And, I don't know what would encourage someone to say that to a cop, because part of me feels like, and this is my own, hey, you guys can think I'm being immature or whatever, I have a sense from cops that they like to use their toys. Maybe it's just the cops I've met. I'm not saying it's every cop I've met, but I get a sense from cops that they're a little trigger happy to try their new taser, light stick, gun, walkie-talkie, attack dog, whatever it is that they have, stun stick, taser stick, I don't know. So I don't like to instigate cops. I would never tell a cop, shoot me now, motherfucker, because they might just take you up on that offer. I wouldn't be too surprised if, not most cops. I think a lot of cops, like maybe even this cop, they probably don't really think too hard about what they would do in a situation where they felt threatened until they're there. And then they go, oh shit, I have a gun, and then they shoot someone. Your job is not to be safe. That, to me, is the bullshit part. Your job is to, in the sense that anyone can even suggest that the job of a police officer is in some way legitimate, outside of the voluntarist paradigm for half a second, if you accept that cops have a duty or a job to do, they, even in that regard, have no effing clue what it is that they're expected to do, or were, like, for example, the oath. You take an oath to the Constitution. I don't know if that says something about the majority of the population, that they think that an oath to a Constitution is something that means something. Like, regardless of whether the cop has good or bad intentions, taking an oath to a sheet of paper, that's like saying, I'm going to go have a conversation with the toilet for a little while and see what I can come up with. It's an illogical statement. It's like, it's not, in freedom, I'm not going to prevent you from going to talk to the toilet, nor would I prevent you from writing down all of your tenets of your life and going, this is my holy scroll, But don't push that on other people. Don't act like this is here to protect us from the government that you're voting for, that you're putting in place, that I don't even want. So without going on a huge side tangent, although people probably appreciate more passion and less repeating the same old news, but with regards to social contracts and that kind of shit, no, I did not agree to your thing. And furthermore, there were a group of people. This is a little short thing. I'll get back to the topics. Where in the time of the drafting of the Constitution, they were known as the Anti-Federalists. And I had a girl one time give me a bunch of random gifts from a thrift store. Like, this is back in like college, like 8-10 years ago, whatever. And I thought it was pretty cute for a girl. I don't mean this in a sexist way at all. Please don't take it like that. Females watching, but I thought it was pretty cute of her to go to a thrift store instead of a mall or whatever, and to pick out gifts that she thought I would appreciate, even though they were never. None of the things were things I had asked for or I mentioned that I like. But one of the things she got me was a book called The Anti-Federalist Papers, and it sat on my bookshelf pretty long because I was not primed for these ideas. It sat on that bookshelf for maybe 8 or 10 years. I flipped through it a couple times. I never read the whole book, but when I finally sat down with it, I was primed. I had listened to Rothbard. I had listened to a lot of folks in the liberty community start to wake me up. And it just occurred to me. I was like, wow, I was like, this information was handed to me almost 8 years ago, that there were this, not even a group, let me not downplay it. The Anti-Federalists were probably at least half, but probably more so the majority. So we have this notion as children that we're given in the public school system where people would like us to believe that America has the best way of organizing society and that democracy is the answer and that we have to just vote. And then we get all the garbage about where we came from and the Pilgrims and the Mayflower, and that's where the lies start to set in, and that's where the manipulation starts. So let's wrap this all back to the topic. So I'm going on a tirade yesterday on Facebook, and I'll admit it was a little bit of a tirade because I couldn't get more than 5 or 10 minutes without posting something new about how mad I was at cops, how cops were so fucking evil, or how something has to get done and this and that, whatever. I don't remember exactly what I was saying, word for word verbatim, because I'm interested in the conversation. But so one thing that I said that really got people's panties in a bunch was the fact that I was saying that there are no good cops. That's what shook people to the core. I have a family member, a cousin of mine, who claims the word anarchist as a label for himself. However, in my opinion, in my rigorous intellectual approach that I try to take, I didn't see him engaging with the ideas too well, and I didn't see him, and I don't over time. I don't see people engaging with their own views. So here is a person, I won't name his name because I don't feel that he deserves to be flamed by anybody or anything. He's on his own intellectual development, and he might be right, I might be wrong. I don't think so, but he describes himself as an anarcho-socialist, which, as far as I believe, and I think many of you might agree with me, in my audience, I think anarcho-socialism is actually an inherent contradiction. It's like it's like saying I have a glass full of dry water, or I met the nicest murderer today. It's just a statement that doesn't have any cohesion within itself. It's self-contradictory to say anarcho-socialist. But he doesn't see that. He doesn't agree with me on that. But it all comes down to this idea of fundamental first principles. So he and I, this person, my cousin, we disagree pretty drastically on many things because of our fundamental beliefs. But I would argue that I have fundamental beliefs, and I would argue that he does not have fundamental principles. He has fundamental beliefs like logic can only take you so far, and some things in life you don't need to think about, you need to do from your heart as a human with compassion, blah, blah, blah. I like all that stuff from a human standpoint, so I don't like to say blah, blah, blah and just chop that out, but I think it's a little premature to kind of give a lot of credit to this humanity interest without looking at the practical results. And if you're not taking a philosophical or fundamental principled stance on your views, it's like building a house on a shaky foundation. Once it finally gets down to someone asking you hardcore critical questions about why you believe what you believe, your foundation is going to show itself for what it is, and then the weight of the house is going to collapse it, and you'll be left with a pile of rubble in the place where your ideas used to be, or where what was important to you used to be. So where am I going with all this? So I'm out there kind of getting mad at cops and pointing out, too, posting these videos, posting the St. Louis video, posting about the Missouri situation with Michael Brown. And again, it's not necessarily just that this guy was shot by a cop, because while I don't agree with the job of law enforcement, if these individuals were working in a free society system, they still wanted to serve and protect and defend the public, they could become a security officer for a stadium or for a private neighborhood or, for a mall or, they could work security detail for someone who's important, who could, be assassinated, or could have people trying to, look for a celebrity or something. So when pressed, I find that a lot of state servants, sorry about that. When pressed, I find that a lot of state servants can't answer why it is that they work in the public sector versus the private sector. They can't say, well, if I worked for a company, I would, because they don't want to face the fact that they have a grandeur and they have a special kind of nature put towards working for the government, working for the state. So I like to make people think about stuff. So anyway, so I'm going on about Facebook about how there are no good cops. I have my anarcho-socialist cousin, and I have various older people in my life, friends that I have that are in their 40s or 50s or 60s, aunts, uncles, and even my mother, actually, just being honest, have all expressed that they, think my views are radical and think that I've gone too far and I'm not being consistent or fair. Hey, if anybody wants to come on the program right now who disagrees with my statement that all cops are bad or that there are no good cops, you want to go ahead and post in the chat, let me know. I will invite you on here if you have something interesting to say. But what I think is, if anything, you gotta draw a line from actions and identity. I'm not saying that your identity isn't largely influential, or your actions aren't largely influential on who you become or what your identity ends up resulting in, at the end of the day, in terms of like how someone will judge you. But I do think that you have to separate what the individual does from who they are. I know that they're very similar, but this was encouraged upon me from others who were critical of me yesterday, and I did agree, and I do agree with that an individual is not solely just the sum of his actions, but just as a car is not solely the sum of the components that go into making it, say. But anyway, I said all cops are bad yesterday, and here's how I defend that statement. So let's take a collection of the group of all the cops. Let's just draw a circle around all the cops in the world and say, let's talk about these people. Of those people, how many of them would arrest a person? Let's assume these cops aren't working in Colorado or Washington State, where marijuana is decriminalized, or legalized, rather. Suppose it's another state. Which one of those cops would not arrest someone for smoking a joint? I mean, seriously, out of all the states and all the police officers that work in those states that have marijuana laws, which are immoral, in my view, show me the cops, or tell me what percentage of cops you think would not prosecute or not arrest an individual for being caught with just marijuana, let's just say. Let's not make it like a pound or, a kilo of this, a kilo of that. Let's make it just someone who's got caught with the joint. Take all the cops let's just talk about America for now, the United States. Take all the cops, show me the ones that wouldn't arrest someone despite there being a law in the books in their jurisdiction against marijuana. Show me the ones that wouldn't actually do it. I would be surprised if you could find 1% of cops. I've actually been in a situation in the past where I've been pulled over with some friends and they, smelled something in the vehicle, and I don't remember this very vividly, but I remember this happening at some point to where it was sort of a don't get in trouble tonight. This is a warning for you. You get your asses home or whatever. That's the exception to the rule. I've had a few number of run-ins with cops, and I'll get into it a little bit more maybe if we have time, but nothing drastic, nothing crazy. But skateboarding, this and third. But so take away all the cops that would arrest you for smoking pot. Now, that's just an example. It could be cops that would arrest you for not putting your children in public school, for drinking your own milk, for growing a garden in your front yard, for not getting your license plate renewed or your registration renewed on your vehicle. Those are all non-violent crimes, and they're all when policed it's aggressive. It's aggressive to stop someone in their free behavior when they're not inflicting or creating any environment for harm. So when I say all cops are bad, I point out that there is not a cop that you could bring to me that will say, oh, I only enforce violent crimes. I don't enforce any victimless crimes. Bullshit. Show me that cop. Someone knows that cop that doesn't do what their officers or their sergeants or their departments tell them to do, and they don't follow the laws. but they only selectively enforce the laws. I'm not even sure that's a good cop, because it shows negligence in your job. Even if your job is to be an immoral thug, you're not doing your job right if you're being, not only being more fair or considerate, but the notion of law enforcement is not to serve and protect. That was the notion of safety officers and that sort of thing. That notion is gone now in America. So we have law enforcement, which is predicated on the notion that laws are right. So that opens up the next layer. So layer one, all cops are bad. Why are all cops bad? Because they all enforce laws, or they enforce edicts on people violently, and punish people for things that are non-violent behaviors, non-destructive, non-harmful behaviors. So that's the second layer of the onion. So peel back the fact that they inflict that malice upon people, or that persecution, I guess, or restriction on people's lives. Go a step further and point out that for a cop to do his or her job correctly, he has to, or she has to, enforce every single law. So it would be nice to just say, these laws are good, these laws are bad. But even in a free society, if you voluntarily signed up to an organization and there was some sort of enforcement around that, like let's say you signed up to work for a company and they said there'll be no drugs on this property, and if you're found with any drugs on your person while working at, Global Tech LLC, whatever, we're going to escort you out and terminate you. It's completely voluntary, because when you sign your employment contract with them, you read these clauses of information, you know what's expected of you, and so forth. So bad cops, if they do their job right, they're bad because they enforce non-violent edicts and restrict people, like using paternalism, treating people like they're children, whereas I'm sorry guys, I'll brain fart. Whereas if they did their job, or if they didn't do their job appropriately, then they're just kind of I don't know what the word is, desperados or whatever. They're kind of like lone gunmen. You don't want that either. You don't want, whether they're free market security detail or whether they're statist police. I don't want people with guns walking around who think that they're in charge to have it in their head that I could be subdued or taken down for walking across the street out of a crosswalk, or for anything, like anything silly like that, or superficial like that in a sense. Going back to the police situation a little bit, I'm going to get into the next topic because we're at the halfway point a little bit. So getting into the police thing a little more, these cops, in my opinion, the public viewpoint, the statist viewpoint, should be more like this, in my opinion, to where these cops, look, you don't have to be a freaking cop. Go work at Dairy Queen. Go drive a tractor. Go be a farmer. Go be a nurse. Be a doctor. Be a clerical person. Be a data entry person. Do a website. I don't care what you do, but if you're going to be a cop, I don't want to hear that you were threatened by someone that was walking with their hands on their side with a pocket knife or with a small blade. When you're wearing layers of clothing, you're wearing body armor over your chest. You have oftentimes gloves on your hands so you can't be cut as easily for grabbing a knife or using your hand to block a knife stab or something. Granted, I understand police officers feel they're free to protect themselves, but your job is risky, and your job involves, in a free society, if you were a security officer or a private security person, you would be taking on a risk in your job too. I mean, working as a security guard at Great Adventure or Disney World is dangerous too, or Walmart, because you don't know who you're going to deal with. The world has unpredictability in it. So my point is, if you're going to be a police officer, I don't want to hear that you had no choice or the man was coming at you. Go look at my video that I posted yesterday, a little short. He was up on a curb. So let me see if I can depict this with my hands. The police officer pulls up on the street, and the guy is down the block a little bit on the sidewalk, kind of ranting and raving. Cops get out. The guy starts to walk towards the cops immediately. I think his arms were out like this, not up, but like kind of out, like what you gonna do, motherfucker, like kind of out. and he was saying something to the detective, shoot me, go ahead, shoot me, motherfucker, whatever, shoot me. And then, so the cops were screaming stuff back, like, freeze, blah, 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 whatever. And he walked up, like, on top of this little curb thing that got progressively bigger, and he looked like he was going to walk away, and then he started turning back towards the police, and he took a few steps, and you hear, bah, 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 bah. I think I counted 8 or 9 rounds, and this guy fell to his death at the feet of the police officer that had done the shooting. I believe it was 2 officers that had done the shooting, but the one that was closest. So one of the people who claimed to be a voluntarist who was, I don't know, they're not my friend on Facebook, but they probably found me through the Voluntary Virtues Network. They were trying to argue that, you know, cops are immoral, period. So he was with me on that, but he was trying to say that this wasn't a case of a wrongful police death, being as the guy, A, supposedly had a gun. I couldn't verify that even from my zoomed-in analysis of the footage. A, supposedly had a gun. B, his position was the cop was being encroached upon. So the ground between the gentleman who was shot, who happens to be an African American, not that that's necessarily relevant, but it may be, and the gentleman who was shot, after he tumbled and rolled down what was basically a hill, even though it was made of concrete, at that point the gentleman was at the feet of the firing officer that had fired upon him. One thing you can tell from the video is that his hands are down, and when he's walking towards the police officer, he's not running or sprinting to where a cop has to make a split-second decision. The man was walking at slightly faster than a walking pace, so maybe a quick walk, but definitely not a jog. He was kind of maybe power walking at best with his hands down, and no one said that he had a gun. There's been no one that I've found that's claimed that this gentleman in St. Louis had a gun. So what I find that inexcusable, that if I was in a free society and I, let's just say, hired that police officer to defend my property, and that was a guest on my property, and it wouldn't be a police officer, it'd be a private security agent, whatever. You know, you understand what I'm saying. If I had hired someone to provide security and protection for me, and they had killed someone in that situation, I would say that's someone that was confused, or maybe you know, sleep deprived, or maybe they had eaten some mushrooms, maybe they had been spiked with some drugs from someone. You don't know what their situation was, and if your job is to serve and protect, whether you think it's a state function or you know it shouldn't be, you know, you're not doing your job if you shoot people before you find out if they did anything wrong. We didn't look. I didn't want the damn police. I don't want the damn police, period. I don't want police in any state, in any town, period. So let me go to the extreme side of it real quick. The reason I'm going with all that is because these folks in their current incarnation are not fucking accountable to you or I or anybody. So that's where I'm coming from, is that even with their supposed rightful authority, they're abusive as hell. They don't do what their job description says anyway, and the people that would fire them, their bosses are silent on this issue. If all the good cops are the majority, then I'm sure in most police departments the good cops would have been promoted. Why would a police force of good cops majoritarily even work for someone who's a bad cop if that guy somehow got picked to be the chief? So I think it's bullshit. I think the people that come in as police officers, and I know someone who is in school to become whatever the euphemism is for police aggressor. Someone's in school to be a what do they call it when you're criminal justice major or whatever. So, and then people try to warp that and say, well, I'm going to become a detective, or I'm going to become a homicide. Yeah, okay. Look, let's face the facts. Police spend most of their day looking for people to give tickets to. That is the primary aspect of their job, is doling out punishment and fine for wanting to be a free individual and wanting to travel. The majority of people in our jails today in America are African American, minorities, Hispanics, and this isn't everybody, but the prison population in the United States of blacks alone I believe I had heard yesterday is actually larger than the entire slave population was um, back in the day of African Americans in America. Slavery was a worldwide epidemic. So anyway, so let's try to land the plane a little bit. With these cops getting out of hand, it is a great time for you to make a stink and make people focus on cops, period. So I think I was somewhat unintentional about it, but I'm glad about the results. I made people reflect upon and think about the fact that there is no such thing as a good cop. Now, I also posted on my Facebook page, I'll try to find the link and put it in the show notes, a video from that I had found yesterday from a gentleman who is a 15-year police veteran, I guess you could say, in an area in Florida. I forget the town. But this gentleman recently tried to do a little bit of activism on his own. He had his Guy Fawkes mask, which, if you guys don't know, it's the mask that's worn in V for Vendetta. It's the mask that Anonymous wears. It's a mask that people identify with activism and counter-culture, counter-revolutionary, or revolutionary type of ideas. So he has this Guy Fawkes mask in his car, which he says he carries with him at all times. Now he's off duty at the time. He pulls over and decides, I'm going to do a little personal activism on my own. So he's standing on the side of the street, putting his Guy Fawkes mask on, and he said he had a cape too and something else. So, but he wasn't brandishing a weapon. He wasn't getting into traffic. He wasn't even holding up an offensive sign or anything that said, fuck the man or whatever. He was just sitting there wearing his Guy Fawkes mask and probably waving at oncoming traffic and stuff like that. People see that mask, and I think many people identify that with protest or counter-authoritarian efforts. But so what happens is a female cop pulls over, and she asks him to please leave the area and to take off his mask. She felt that he was creating a public safety risk, and she didn't like the mask that he was wearing. So he said, with all due respect, and he knew exactly what the statute was. He said, under statute, blah, 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 of the code, da-da-da-da-da, I'm free to assemble, and this does not constitute a threat to public safety, da-da-da-da. She pressed the issue, and I'm trying to remember if he was arrested or not. I believe he was. But what he had said in his video that he found interesting was that he didn't want to mention to the police officer that he was also a police officer because he knew he would get preferential treatment. So he said, I wanted to see what it was like to act like a citizen. And so I believe he refused to take off the mask, if I remember correctly. And once this all transpired, he was arrested and whatever. Yeah, so he was. I'm trying to recall. He was arrested and released pretty shortly, but he didn't mention his being a police officer until he was already down at the station and booked and all that, because he wanted to prove that he was extremely polite with the lady police officer that pulled him that came over to him. He explained himself. He even knew the code. He even knew the law. So to those of you who say ignorance of the law is no excuse, I say that's bullshit. I'll say knowledge of the law is no protection. It doesn't matter how much you fucking study the law or pretend that the state is your god. As soon as a cop decides they disagree with you, their badge and their own whim and their ego is all they need to persecute you. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, either in movies or in my own real life, a police officer saying something to the effect of, well, tell it to the judge, which basically means, I don't know if I'm doing my job right, but I'm going to screw you over and take your day and ruin it. And then you can't get pulled into a political system in America without having it financially rape you in a large way, unless you're very well off, which God bless you, that's great. But if you are like most folks and you live check to check and you get pulled over or you get a court date, it doesn't matter how guilty or innocent you are. You're missing a day of work. You're running the risk of looking like a delinquent or something like that to your peers, whether your peers are your volunteers peers or your peers are your statist employment peers, your boss, your coworkers. Oh, well, RJ got arrested. They don't want to know that I was just defending myself or defending a loved one or defending my freedom. They just, oh, you broke a law. Ooh. So there is a stigma to all that. But so I think I kind of covered really well how and why I was saying all cops are bad. They're bad because if they do their job, they're immoral, and if they don't do their job, they're negligent. And if they're negligent, they're still immoral because there's people who are expecting them to do something, and they're not doing that for them, and those are the people that supposedly hired them, even though that's all fallacious. So anyway, that's half the program, a little more than half the program. I can't stress to you how much I associate the two murders that I witnessed, and also the cops shooting tear gas into crowds at Ferguson, Missouri, and all that shit. I can't tell you how hard it is for me to disassociate that with all the cops. So for those of you who were spending your time yesterday arguing with me and debating with me, I will concede a little bit of ground and say, like for example, this cop who wore the Guy Fawkes mask and refused to be a cop for a minute and said, let me just see what it's like to be on the other side of this badge for a second. He is probably going to lose his job, he said, from the force. It's possible he's on a leave of absence. And, he said he used the word awakening, I believe. He said that, this has been my awakening to where he didn't realize how aggressive. He thought that when he went out and did his job as a police officer, that he was respected by everyone in his community. And I have another topic I want to get to, but I'm just going to try to wrap this up with the cop thing. I've heard it been said by a few people that the reason we have this problem with police officers today is because people don't respect cops. Let me put that into a different way. The reason we have a problem with rapists today is because people don't respect rapists. No. Rape is not something that people would do nicer if people were more cooperative. I'm sorry that sounds kind of funny, but rape is something that people don't give a fuck about how violent their act is. They're not like, let me try to make this rape as nice for you as possible. No. Once you've said, I'm going to be that guy that enforces my will upon someone, from there, most people, in most instances that I've heard of, the leap of faith is drastic. It's not like, oh, well, I hope I can be authorized to do this. I hope people don't disagree with my take on this. The people that believe they have authority, whether they're wearing a badge or they're wearing a U.S. Army military outfit, or whether they're, and this opens up to teachers and postal workers and all this other shit. When you think that your job is somehow more valuable than it is, you got another thing coming, man. I used to sell cars, and now I do websites, and I do social media and stuff, freelance. I want to work for myself. But in either situation, what I found was that you have an obligation to your customer. Your customer is your boss. So when my boss tells me, Randy, come up to the desk when I was selling cars, and I was sitting with a client in the middle of explaining how leasing worked or how their down payment was going to affect their monthly payment or whatever the case was, I would say to my boss, 1 second, I would do this from across the showroom and say, no, I'm in a conversation with my client right now. I don't care about your position. I don't care about this and that. I'm in a conversation with my client. So police don't have that leeway because, like I said, the conflict is built into the job. The police chief or the authority within the police department is going to tell you, do your fucking job. Your job is not to decide whether someone is innocent or guilty or law is just or unjust. Do your fucking job. That's a little contradictory in a sense because when they err on the side of caution or err on the side of liberty and they give people their day in court and they don't just open fire when there's no need to open fire on someone, they do take the job into their hands. But when they go and err on the side of liberty as opposed to the side of violence and aggression, that's when the police officer says, no, if you're gonna have to guess one or the other, better to go heavy on the aggression than to go soft on it. So, look, man, I say all cops are bad cops. If they're a good cop, they're probably about to quit, or they did quit. The only good cops in my mind are reformed cops. You used to be a cop, and now you're not. You could be a good person. You can go home and be a good husband. You could be a good father. Not great because deep down you're instilling that violence is the way to get things you want to your family and to your children. But you could be maybe a non-violent father with your family. You don't hit your kids. You don't encourage violence in the household, but you do encourage violence against perpetrators. So I'm going to stand by the bad cop situation. All cops are bad cops. If someone has a good cop, they'd like to tell me that works the force and somehow doesn't enforce victimless crimes. And you can't be a good cop when you work for the state because the state's inherently evil. All right? That's a whole other topic for another episode. I'm loving that I was able to actually go the past 49 minutes, minus like 4 or 5 because I was on Punk Rock Time starting, ranting to you guys. I did not promote the show, but it's okay because I knew I had enough stuff to go on, and I still have a little more for you guys. That stuff that's kind of irritated me and I want to get off my chest. But I'm glad that I had a couple listeners popping in, popping out. I want to also just take a moment to say that I was really honored to have the past 3 guests that I had the past 3 weeks to have in this order: Nima Vedadi, followed by Michael W. Dean, Lusander Fiend. Some of you might not know who those three folks are because they're all from one program. They're from one podcast / radio show, the Freedom Fiends. But many of you have heard of those folks. And that, when you watch my Roads to Liberty, when I talk about it on the episode, on the program, you all know that I went through the Ron Paul door like most of us did. But once I got through the other side, I said, now what? There were the Freedom Fiends to help me laugh at the state and help me understand that anarchy is not about Molotov cocktails and about burning down shops, storefronts. It's about real fundamental moral philosophies that can be consistently applied. So thank you to the Fiends, and thank you to my three guests, Nima, Michael, and Lusander. And if anybody knows of someone that would be good for this program, or someone that you think I would be interested in interviewing, or someone who has something interesting to say that you'd like to have me speak to, PM me, man. If you know me on Facebook, great. If not, you can shoot me an email at Roads. What is my freaking Roads to Liberty email? I don't use it that much. Give me 1 second, guys. Roads. I think it's feedback@roadstoliberty.com. Yeah, that's what it is. Feedback@roads with the number 2 liberty.com. Even though the website is Roads TO Liberty. Yeah, I got both domains, but I use one for email, one for the website. That's pretty stupid and confusing, but no big deal. So, I got a few more minutes left. I don't want to botch this with all my blabbering. So we talked about the state. We talked about cops. Here's the second issue. Stefan Molyneux is receiving a lot of flack recently, and I feel like it's out of nowhere. And here's some of the topics that people are giving him a hard time over. And I'm going to dispel them as much as I can, one by one, to where, look, I'm going to defend the guy right now because I don't think he's getting a fair shake by you guys at all. I'm not saying everyone here watching or whatever, but many of those who had either been agnostic or somewhat passively supportive, I find, are now jumping the shark and going completely backwards and saying he's a threat and he's got these dangerous ideas and da-da-da-da-da. Look, man, my belief is, and you guys can all like it or leave it, I'm not here to make friends. I hope I do make friends, but I hope I make the right friends. I'm here to spread truth. I'm here to be honest with y'all about what I see in the world, and I want to have a conversation. So this guy Molyneux has spent countless hours creating content, studying philosophy, working and formulating his arguments to go against the state, so to speak, in terms of why the state is wrong or why it should be challenged. And what not you guys, but what many folks right now are bent out of shape about is the guy tells you to defoo, tells you to leave your family of origin. Not in all cases, but that's an aspect of what he does, and there's some people who are influenced by that, including myself to some degree. But I'm only influenced to things to the extent that I find them to be reasonable or rational. So what I will say before I even get into defending Molyneux, because I got about 10 minutes to do so, is there is no great man. So take away the great man theory, look at your own efforts for liberty, and say, all right, so I'm going to sit here and criticize Stefan Molyneux because I don't like his views on women, or I don't like his views on the family, or I don't like his views on IP, which no one even understands properly, I don't think, or a few people are really understanding properly. Are you perfect on everything? Do you have all of your views in liberty figured out to a T? Do you know exactly how dispute resolution or conflict resolution would take place in a free society? Of course you don't. You can't know that. So you put anybody on a podcast for 3 to 5 to 10,000 hours of time, and you don't expect you to find something that you don't agree with the person on. That's unreasonable. It's just that, and Molyneux isn't sitting there saying I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. He's saying if you disagree, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to put you at the front of the line on the calls, and we can get you on the program and have a conversation. So it's not to be saying, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, no, leave your family. Every time a caller calls in and says, I'm afraid that I can't reach my father, or I can't reach my brother, or I can't reach my mother, he asks you about the past, he asks you about what happened, he asks you about what have you done, and what evidence do you have to know that this person is not responsive or is loving you or whatever. And he uses a Socratic approach, and every philosopher from Socrates onward, and probably beforehand, uses the Socratic approach. And that's a whole other topic for another episode. But the Socratic approach is where you use questions to get the person you're talking to help them get further to objective truth. If you think that your view is closer to the objective truth than theirs, it's not about proving yourself right, it's about helping them distill truth from fiction. If you're absolutely wrong, and they can point that out to you, you as a part of the debate or conversation ought to as well retreat and retract. So let's defend Molyneux on a few things. First of all, the IP thing is bullshit. He has his videos on Voluntary Virtues Network, and we have his permission explicitly stating that we can repost any of his content that we want to without paying him or without giving any royalties to him. If I'm incorrect on this, Michael, please correct me, and I will, engage in those issues with you and maybe retreat. But I see this as something that he's flexible in a lot of areas. He's flexible on his positions with all these things, but he's not wishy-washy. He's not a fluff kind of guy. I'm not going to sit here and go, let me compare him to this other person. Let me compare him to Cantwell or Ian Freeman or Michael Dean or this one. No, I'm just going to compare him to himself and what value I found from him. I just feel like everyone is so quick, not everyone, but many people are so quick to write off good work. This is like Atlas Shrugged. This is like the Fountainhead. They're so quick to throw Hank Rearden or Howard Rourke basically onto the cross, crucify the man because of his productivity. I mean, the other issue is abusive family relationships. And I wanted to do a whole program or half of the program on this, but you get me started talking about cops and it gets out of hand. But my girlfriend just wrote a public letter that basically was a really honest statement about her childhood and her past, and she posted it on Facebook, on her public Facebook, something that I'm sure, from my marketing experience, maybe 5 to 10% of people will actually open up and read, even a majority of the way through. But I read it completely through when I woke up this morning, because I woke up in the afternoon actually, because I stayed up late. But when I read that, I was really amazed at the honesty that she had given into that effort. And I know for a fact, and I don't think she would dispute this with me, that without the influence that I had, that I could share with her, and the influence that Stefan Molyneux had and shared with me, neither one of us would have the truth that we have about our family relationships. I mean, when I express my views about the state, or about police violence, or about the million dead souls that are on the hands of the U.S. military in the past decade, my parents, specifically my mom, she'll say stuff like, I'm worried about you, and these views are scary, and you weren't raised to think these things. Not I disagree with you, or not let me challenge you on that and show you how the military is beneficial. People, even in my own family, even the people that are closest to me that supposedly love me the most, their love for me is not great enough to go past the discomfort that comes from personally not wanting to face an issue. So sorry about that. I live under a cafe right now, and there's some kids outside playing, so that's actually a great thing. But just in case you guys hear that. But we can't move forward as adults. We can't discern the aggression and the aggressors and the violent and abusive relationships in our lives if we don't start from the root. And I think Molyneux is really to be commended for shifting the conversation. I mean, the liberty movement, we're so apt to just talk about whatever's the topic, whether it's thin or thick, or whether it's, I don't know. I try not to look at that stuff. I try not to look at the mainstream libertarian talking points. If we're trying to be a fashion statement, then count me out. I'm not part of the we then. If we're trying to wake people up and give people new perspective and truth, and be compassionate and welcoming to people who are seeking truth, then yeah. But if you're going to bash someone like Stefan Molyneux, who has got a canon of philosophical, rigorous work, and who constantly, on a weekly basis in his life, spends time on the internet talking to people about their family, abusive relationships, and about statism, and about hitting children, and you want to say the man's crazy because he tells you to leave your family when your family's been abusive to you for your entire life, and sometimes you're 30, 40 years old, and he's not saying leave your family, he's saying, why do you hang on to relationships that are abusive to you? It doesn't matter if it's your dad or your brother or your niece or your nephew. If they're abusive to you, don't take that. You can't create a template for your own self-value if you let abuse into your life. My girlfriend Sarah, she faced it. Molyneux helped her. I'm not speaking for her. She's told me that. He helped me as well. He helped me realize what is acceptable, what is not, what are different approaches to take. So I thank the man, and I welcome you guys to be a little bit more cautious in jumping on a flame bandwagon because you don't understand something or you don't like something at face value. If someone would like to debate the Molyneux issue or the cop issue with me on another program, or just have a casual kind of back and forth about it, even if you don't totally disagree with me on everything, if you just maybe want to know, have a conversation on there, PM me, man, or female, man. I want to have not just celebritarians, but I want to have regular Atarians on my show, because that's what I am, man. I'm not a celebrity. If I ever do get more notoriety, you have my word that I'm not using it for any kind of ill intent. And if I ever do, shun me from the community, and let it be known. But don't shun people and don't cut people out so quick. And realize the value that someone had brought before you hang them out to dry for one little thing you don't understand. Oh, and I'm going to close off. Chuck Ford is coming out with Liberty Geek, and we'll talk about this more in another program. Stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Peace.